Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are wading into a surprisingly contentious area. It's where faith, law, and Canadian bureaucracy all collide. We're taking a really focused look at an issue faced by, mosques, temples, spiritual centers, all sorts of faith-based organizations trying to get charitable status with the CRA. That's the Canada Revenue Agency.
Right.
Now, you'd think if you spend your days organizing prayers, teaching scripture, running a food bank, building a community, that your application would be, well, pretty straightforward.
You would absolutely assume so.
But we've seen so many applications from really sincere established groups get rejected for an astonishing reason. They're being told that they are not, legally speaking, advancing religion. Instead, they're just promoting a philosophy.
It's an incredible distinction.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic slapdown. It's like you present this perfect light as air souffle, and the auditor just looks at you and says, I appreciate the effort, but this is legally just enthusiastically arranged eggs.
That analogy is perfect. It really is, because it gets right to that gap between a lived spiritual experience and a very rigid legal definition.
So what's our mission here?
Our mission is to unpack the specific, non-negotiable legal tests that applicants have to pass. It's a test that comes from centuries of common law, actually.
Okay.
And this test, it's the gatekeeper. And the CRA isn't judging your beliefs or your community work. They're just asking one thing. Do your practices fit into this very specific legal box?
So it's like a government bouncer with a law degree.
Exactly. Checking your ID against a very, very specific list.
Okay, so let's unpack this framework, this legal test. The sources we've looked at call it the holy trinity of religious charity status.
That's right. And if you miss even one part of this trinity, your organization, no matter how spiritual or beneficial, it just lands in the charity application graveyard.
So this is all or nothing.
It's completely all or nothing. To satisfy the CRA that you are, in fact, advancing religion, you have to clearly show three things, three non-negotiable elements.
All right, give us the breakdown. What's the first one?
The first element is a theistic doctrine. The organization must believe in and promote a god or gods or a supreme being. And it has to be specific.
So a vague reverence for the universe or like universal energy wouldn't cut it?
It fails immediately. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks. A spiritual practice that's focused on, say, nature or humanity or your inner self. If it doesn't direct that reverence toward a supreme external deity, it just won't meet the standard.
Wow. That immediately puts a lot of organizations at a disadvantage. I'm thinking of some forms of Buddhism or, modern secular spiritual movement.
Absolutely. And that leads directly into the second element, a worship doctrine.
So just believing isn't enough.
Belief is necessary, but it's not sufficient. Your followers, your adherents, they have to actively engage in worship or reverence that is specifically directed at that supreme being.
Okay, where's the tension there? Because a lot of groups engage in deep contemplation.
Yeah.
Right.
The tension is between introspection and supplication. If your main focus is on meditation or mindfulness for personal growth, even if you acknowledge a higher power, the CRA can see that as just philosophy. Personal development.
Not religion.
Not religion in the charitable sense. The law is looking for things like prayers, rituals, ceremonies, acts of reverence aimed at the deity, not just something that leads to, say, inner peace or stress reduction.
That is a very, very fine line.
It is. Which brings us to the third element, which kind of holds it all together, a particular and comprehensive system of faith and worship.
Meaning it can't just be a spiritual book club.
Exactly. It can't be a loosely organized discussion group. The CRA needs to see established doctrines, rituals, a cohesive framework, a structured system.
That has to look like an institution.
It has to demonstrate it's a system of faith, something that can be passed on and maintain its identity over time.
Okay, so let's get to the painful part. When an organization fails this test, they get that form letter.
Yes, the letter usually says something like, based on the information we have, it is our position that the applicant is not advancing religion, but is instead promoting the philosophy of. And then they just insert the name of your spiritual community.
That's brutal. That completely invalidates their mission from their perspective. So where does this rejection hit the hardest? What are the real-world examples?
Well, the sources point to a few recurring scenarios. One is the missing supreme being problem. We see this with, say, a spiritual center focused on mindfulness and ethical living.
Right.
People are having profound transformative experiences. But because the focus is on human potential, not directed deity worship, it gets legally classified as a philosophy, a lifestyle movement.
What else?
Another one is the incomplete system complication. This often happens with newer religious movements. Their beliefs are deeply held, but their structure might be too fluid, maybe too decentralized.
Hmm.
The CRA really wants to see a codified, stable structure.
So if you look different, or if your tradition is outside that established Western religious vocabulary, the CRA is immediately skeptical.
It definitely presents a challenge. The sources are clear that this rigidity really impacts certain groups. Think about Eastern spiritual traditions where the goal is enlightenment, not necessarily praying to a creator god.
Many forms of Buddhism, for example.
Exactly. They might really struggle with that first requirement for a theistic doctrine.
And what about indigenous spiritual organizations? That must be incredibly complex.
That is one of the most complex areas. The definition of religion that the CRA uses is, historically, rooted in Western, often Abrahamic, legal ideas.
So it's a square peg in a round hole.
It can be. Indigenous spiritual practices, with their focus on the land, on ancestors, on nature spirits, they may not fit that legal template of a singular supreme being with a codified dogma. So they can fail the test, even though their practices are profoundly religious and ancient.
That really raises some big questions about the fairness of this definition in a country like Canada today.
It does. And even progressive or reform groups can run into trouble. If a reform synagogue, for example, emphasizes social justice so much in its application that the connection to traditional worship seems secondary.
CRA might flag it.
They might argue it's promoting a philosophy of social betterment, not advancing religion. It all comes down to how you present yourself.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The actual difference between religion and philosophy. How does the CRA consistently manage to split that atom?
It really comes down to focus and function. The best way to synthesize it is probably this. Philosophy asks questions and proposes answers. Religion worships the source of those answers.
So the CRA is looking for worship. That's the key function.
That's the key. They're looking for evidence that the primary purpose is promoting the theistic doctrine through worship.
So if your activities look purely philosophical, you're in trouble. Things like promoting personal growth is the main goal.
Yes. Or teaching ethical principles without tying them directly to a divine commandment or scripture. Uniting people around shared values like humanitarianism is seen as philosophical.
But uniting them around shared worship is religious.
That's the distinction they make.
And this is made even worse by what the sources call the CRA's secret guidance.
It's incredibly frustrating. The CRA has internal, unofficial guidance on how they assess advancing religion, but they don't publish it. It's not public.
So you're trying to hit a target you can't fully see.
It's charity law hide and seek, and the bureaucracy is always going to win that game.
Okay, so for organizations that want to avoid this graveyard and navigate this legal maze, what are the non-negotiable practical steps they need to take?
The first step is just hyperclarity. You have to be explicit about all three elements. Don't assume the auditor knows your tradition.
Have it all out.
Spell out who the supreme being is, what the method of worship is, and what your comprehensive system looks like. Use really explicit language.
And you have to connect the dots between your activities and your beliefs.
Absolutely. That's the second step. You have to connect every activity. Show a clear and material connection between, say, a youth program or a language class and the promotion of those three religious elements.
So you can't just teach kids good citizenship.
You have to show how teaching them good citizenship advances the theistic doctrine of your organization. It has to link back.
And the language you use matters just as much.
It really, really does. That's the third key. Use unmistakably religious language. While you have to be authentic, if your documents are full of terms like mindfulness or personal development, you're making the CRA's case for them.
So use words like prayer, worship, salvation.
Exactly. Use words that leave no doubt about the religious nature of your mission.
That's essential advice. But this brings up an important alternative view. Is charitable status even the right goal for every organization?
That's a critical point. It's often seen as the ultimate goal, but it comes with immense regulatory burden.
The overhead is huge, right?
It is. You're talking about annual T3010 returns, strict limits on political activity, disbursement quotas, the risk of audits. It's a massive compliance headache.
And for some smaller groups, that could be a full-time job.
It can be. So you have to ask, who is funding you? If your main revenue is from membership fees for courses or retreats, and you don't really rely on donations that need tax receipts,
We might not be.
you might be better off as a regular nonprofit corporation. You can still operate legally, But you avoid almost all of that CRA charitable oversight. You get so much more freedom.
So what's the core takeaway here for you?
I think the key thing to remember is that the CRA is not questioning the sincerity of your beliefs. They're just referees. Highly technical referees applying a very old, structured legal test.
And understanding that framework, the theistic doctrine, the worship doctrine, and the comprehensive system is the only way to avoid that trap of being called a philosophy.
Exactly. You have to anticipate that rigidity and address it head-on in your application.
And that brings us to our final thought for you to consider. Given that this specific three-part test is rooted in centuries-old common law and, it implicitly favors certain types of institutions, how effectively can a single legal definition really capture the breadth, the nuance, and the constant evolution of religion in the modern world? We'll leave you to ponder whether the law is actually equipped to keep pace with faith.
A great question.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.